Walk-off catcher's interference on a checked swing? What?
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Gabby Maljanian, former ESPN social media associate and current host of the Boston Balling podcast as well. And I'm here to bring you the latest in all things Boston Red Sox, Monday through Friday, straight to your favorite podcast feed. And the best part, it's free. So make sure that you always continue to tune in because I'm here every single day with Locked On Red Sox. What happened last night? Legitimately, what happened last night? That is the biggest question of the day as the Red Sox lost in frustrating and heartbreaking walk-off fashion last night against the Philadelphia Phillies. And you know what makes it infuriating? It's because that was a winnable game for the Boston Red Sox. And I'm going to be making sense of it. Walk-off catcher's interference, plus Walker Buehler's stunning performance, and the Red Sox extra inning struggles continuing. Lots to digest, but what was that game? This game continued to show the Red Sox youth and proved that the Red Sox have a young roster and they still have things they need to figure out. And one of those young players is Carlos Narvaez, and he was at the heart and soul of the way the Red Sox lost last night. He has not been particularly sharp behind the plate as of late. There was a key passed ball earlier in the game that they actually ended up calling a wild pitch when Aroldis Chapman was pitching. He gave up a base hit to the first batter that he faced. And then ultimately, what they thought was wild pitch that still should have been a pass ball ended up getting that runner over to second in a really key spot in the eighth inning. So that alone by Narvaez was not reassuring. And he has been taking on more of the workload in the catching role this season. And Connor Wong has kind of been demoted to the backup catcher, which rightfully so. I mean, the offensive productivity that Carlos Narvaez has especially provided this year made him earn that number one catching spot, whereas Connor Wong has been doing the opposite and has had a serious decline at the plate from the last couple of seasons. So there you have it, where you have a mix of the two of them catching, but Narvaez taking on more of the workload. So behind the plate, not the best night for him, including how the game ended up ending, which was in the bottom of the 10th inning, bases loaded, and Carlos Narvaez got called for catcher's interference on a checked swing. So ultimately what happened was Edmundo Sosa was at the plate, decided to check his swing, felt like Narvaez's glove had made contact with the bat. So the play ended up being reviewed and it was ruled that it was catcher's interference. So it led to a walk-off win by the Phillies. And it was the weirdest thing ever because the Red Sox have been called for catcher's interference many times this season, which just should not be happening in the first place. They've had a handful of those calls, about 6 or 7 this year, all starting at the beginning of the season. It's happened to Connor Wong. It's happened to Carlos Narvaez. It even happened to Blake Sabol when he was catching in Connor Wong's place when he was hurt. So the Red Sox have gotten way too comfortable with catcher's interference, which is, of course, not very good. But it happened last night. But it happened in walk-off fashion, ultimately ended up determining the game. It marked just the second walk-off catcher's interference in at least the divisional era of baseball, which dates back to 1969, and it was the first since 1971. So it never happens. It was a really rare ending, but it goes to show that the Red Sox are still a young team and they're still putting pieces together and they're still learning in the pressure moments. And while Narvaez has been very good for the Red Sox this season, he is still a rookie. So he's going to make rookie mistakes sometimes. Sometimes the pressure is going to be a lot. And that was something that really showed in last night's game, was that in more than one instance where the spotlight was on him and the pitcher, he couldn't get the job done behind the plate, and it cost the Red Sox the game. He ended up taking responsibility for it after and saying the loss was on him, which, yes, in part it is, because that just 100% absolutely cannot happen and could have been avoided. Would the Phillies still have walked it off in that inning? Probably. I mean, the chances were very high given the circumstances, but you never know. They might not have. Jordan Hicks, who was pitching in that inning, might have gotten out of it in some Houdini type of way with 0 outs and the bases loaded. So you don't know, but you can infer it. But regardless of that, it's still the way that it ended, because a walk-off is a walk-off. And if it ended on a hit, so be it. Sucks, but it happened. This is worse to me, because this is something that so could have been avoided and just shouldn't happen, and dates back to all of these small mistakes that the Red Sox have made over the course of the season that have cost them games. And it just shows their youth and shows that they are still learning. Now, granted, this was not the only reason, even close, as to why the Red Sox lost this game, and we can't place the entirety of the blame on Narvaez. What we can do is place the blame on the offense as a whole, because the Red Sox struck out 16 times in this game. 16. And they had 8 hits and scored 2 runs. And they could not capitalize with runners on base. Zack Wheeler started the game for the Phillies, and the Red Sox got 7 hits against him. He pitched 6 innings, giving up 2 earned runs with 10 strikeouts. And he did give up a home run on the first batter of the game to Jarren Duran, but the Red Sox bats were pretty silent other than that. So they had their chances. They had many opportunities in which there were runners on base, and they could not get that big hit to drive a run in. So had they been able to capitalize on some of those opportunities, they would not have probably been in this situation in which they were ending the game and losing on walk-off catcher's interference. I mean, come on, what are we talking about here? It sounds crazy, but the Red Sox continue to find crazy ways to lose games, and the offense needed to do a lot more than it did. And obviously, they couldn't take care of business last night. Granted, Wheeler was pitching, so I was hoping for the best, but wasn't expecting a win. But when it's as close and competitive as it is, it's definitely frustrating that something like that happens. And in that specific instance, Carlos Narvaez didn't even realize when he was framing that he could have come in contact with the bat. And there were people confused because they were saying, how is it interference if it's on a checked swing? If he's not swinging, how does that count as interference? But the rule states that it does. It is still interference regardless. The glove hit the bat, and therefore automatically it's an interference play. Now, I could see this being a loophole that teams use, because why would hitters not go up there and just check their swing and try to draw interference if they know that they can do that and they know that that's part of the game and that that's a rule? Because it really seems like now this puts hitters at an advantage of being able to find a loophole and saying, oh, I'm going to go up there and I'm going to attempt to swing, but really I'm going to check my swing and try to get my bat to hit the catcher's glove. So that way then I can take my base. I hope that doesn't happen. MLB might have to think about changing the rule about catcher's interference if so, but it's just truly the icing on the cake for the Red Sox yet again finding another creative way to lose a game, and the sloppiness cost them once again. Luckily, it was a competitive game and they were close, and a lot of that had to do with Walker Buehler, who gave a stunning performance last night, and I'm going to be discussing it next. I don't want to call him a gambling addict or say that he has a sports betting problem, but my husband might have a sports betting problem, and that is all thanks to FanDuel. He's gotten hooked on it ever since he downloaded the app, and he bets on all different kinds of sports. With the WNBA being in their all-star break right now, he's in a little bit of a lull, but he's going to get right back to it over the rest of this week, and he's been able to make tons of money betting on lots of different sports, and you 100% can do that too. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. It will win you lots of money. I promise you, I've seen it firsthand. Walker Buehler dominated last night against the Phillies, and he deserved better from his team. Walker Buehler last night surprised all of us in a good way, and this could be a turning point for him. This could seriously be a turning point for him because of the fact that he was able to be in control. He had a really good outing of 7 innings pitched, giving up 6 hits and 2 runs, but only one of them was earned with 1 walk and 4 strikeouts. And his ERA is now down to a 5.72. The other thing about that performance was he was hammering the strike zone. He only threw 89 pitches with 61 of them going for strikes. And I thought there was a chance he was going to start the 8th inning, but there was a really tough part of the Phillies lineup coming up to start the 8th inning, which is why also Alex Cora brought in his closer, Aroldis Chapman, who usually would pitch the 9th inning, but in this situation brought him in the 8th because the Phillies had the heart of their order coming up. And Alex Cora said, I want him to face them. Also, it was a lot of lefties coming up at that part in the order. So he wanted Chapman from a matchup perspective as well. That ended up going well. He gave up just the 1 hit, but no runs and recorded a strikeout. But Walker Buehler, 7 innings pitched with 1 earned run. You take that any day of the week. And even to begin with, when the outing first started, I noticed a difference in his delivery. He looked like he had a lot more command of his pitches, and he was quicker to the plate than we're used to seeing from him. He just looked really confident out there, and it was never really his stuff that wasn't good. He has a good arsenal of off-speed pitches that he's utilized throughout the course of his career, and that wasn't necessarily the issue with him. It was more mechanical stuff, timing, and being able to execute in the strike zone, because he's definitely experienced his fair share of sloppiness this year, but he went into this game meaning business, and he wanted to go out there and just pitch really well, and that is exactly what we saw from him. And unfortunately, he didn't factor into the decision since the Red Sox lost the game. It rightfully should have, in any game, gotten a win after how well he pitched, but not with this Red Sox team. He tallied his 2nd straight quality start and just his 6th of the season so far. And this game also marks the 3rd time this year that the 30-year-old right-hander tossed at least 6 innings while allowing 1 run or fewer. But he's failed to post at least 5 punch-outs in any of his last 6 outings. His stats currently, including the 5.72 ERA that I mentioned, he has a 1.52 whip and 67 to 36 strikeout to walk ratio over 85 frames. So obviously the walks are definitely something that he needs to cut down on and continue to improve in that area. But he definitely has been hit or miss all season long, primarily miss, unfortunately. He's had some really scary outings, and he doesn't often pitch deep into games. So that is something that I will say was a positive of the game from last night, despite the fact that the loss was just terrible and one of the worst ways we've seen them lose all season long, if not the worst way. And that was not fun to watch. But Buehler being as dominant as he was really helped the Red Sox to rest their bullpen, first of all, and not have to blow through everybody. And second of all, made people feel a little bit more optimistic about the fact that Buehler could be turning the tide for this push that the Red Sox are trying to make in the second half of the season. Because in reality, at the end of the day, the Red Sox are going to need their starting pitchers, and they're going to need them to perform well if they want any chance at a playoff spot. Now, I mentioned Buehler the other day because obviously we don't need him to be a number 1 or even a number 2 starter, because Garrett Crochet undoubtedly is the number 1, the ace at the top of the rotation. He is the guy that's going to go out there that you can trust on a consistent basis to go out there and take care of business. But with the way that Brayan Bello and Lucas Giolito have been pitching overall in their outings as of late, you don't need Buehler to step into that number 2 starter role because either of them is capable of doing that with how they've performed over the last month plus. It's been a pleasant and welcome surprise among Red Sox Nation, seeing the way that those two have made some changes and they've been able to get things done at a high level as of late. So we don't need Walker Buehler to be a front end starter. We need him to be somebody who can eat innings and throw in the back of the rotation and at least keep the Red Sox competitive. And that's exactly what he did in his outing last night. And I hate that that was wasted and the Red Sox lost because, again, because we've seen inconsistencies a lot from Buehler this season, it's hard to really feel confident that his next outing is going to be as good as this one was. And you have to capitalize and take advantage when your guy is going out there and just pounding that strike zone. Now, granted, I know that the guy he was pitching against was no joke in Zack Wheeler, and the Red Sox offense was struggling in that regard to get things going. But it just felt like a game that they really needed to take advantage of and try to find a way to win, because that would have been a huge way to start the series in a thrilling back and forth game. The Red Sox end up finding a way to pull it out. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. They didn't get Buehler the run support that he needed, and they didn't get him the win that he deserved to get. But the biggest difference I noticed in Walker Buehler from this start compared to other starts that he's made is that he was confident from the get-go. And he was getting ahead of hitters. He was getting lots of swings and misses at a higher rate than what we're used to seeing from him. Usually he hasn't been this season a big swing and miss pitcher, and I was hoping to see more of that from him. And he went out there and he started throwing, and I said, wow, there's something different about Buehler today, and it's a good different. Things are working for him. And sure enough, he went out there and he was able to perform at a high level for all 7 of those innings. And he had a nice pick-me-up from Aroldis Chapman and then Garrett Whitlock, who went out there and threw 1 inning, and he looked good. 3 strikeouts. Through 13 pitches, 11 of them for strikes. His ERA is now at 3.23. Aroldis Chapman throwing 1 inning with the 1 hit, like I said, and the 1 strikeout. He threw 23 pitches with 16 of them going for strikes. His ERA is at a 1.15. I mean, it goes without saying how dominant Chapman has been this year, arguably having one of the best seasons of his career right now. And one of the biggest things with Chapman going into the season that was a concern was the walks and him walking people at a high rate, because that is something that he was known to have been doing throughout the course of his career, especially over the last few seasons. But he really has cut down significantly on the walks. And when he is walking people, he's still able to work his way out of the inning. So with the Phillies top 4 in their lineup, that's arguably the best top 4 in baseball in terms of a lineup makeup. I'm not saying as individual players. I'm saying when you look at the overall makeup of the lineup, that could be the best combination of 1 through 4 that's in the league. So Alex Cora wanted to bring in Chapman to start the 8th inning, even though Buehler's pitch count was still relatively low, just because he felt like the Red Sox would have a better shot to keep it a tie game in that inning if Chapman went out there. And sure enough, they did. But it was really refreshing to see this type of performance from Walker Buehler, because going into the season when the Red Sox signed him, they signed him on a 1-year deal, but they spent a good amount of money to get him in Boston. So the whole idea was, well, we're not ready to commit to him beyond 1 year because he has an injury history and we don't really know how things are going to go. So 1 year, he said, fine, okay, I'll go to Boston. So it's an experimental year, because the worst thing that happens is he continues to not pitch well at all. And the Red Sox say, okay, we're not going to bring you back next year. Or he has this dramatic turnaround and he continues to pitch the way that we've seen him pitch in his last couple outings. And then the Red Sox say, okay, we'll re-sign you for another year. So based on how things have gone for him as of late, this isn't necessarily a scenario right now in which the Red Sox are saying, well, we have to panic about Buehler because they don't have this long-term commitment to him. But this is a golden opportunity for him to continue to pitch at a high level and continue to carry that momentum with him that we saw from him in this outing last night. Because again, baseball is such a big mental game. And if you're coming off your arguably best outing of the season, or at least one of your best outings of the season, even though the team didn't win, you can go to bed that night knowing it's not your fault and knowing you still have it in you. And now that Buehler knows he still has it in him, I would love to see him carry that over into outings moving forward. It could seriously be a huge game changer for a team hoping to make the postseason. So hopefully he continues to keep things rolling here as the Red Sox continue to progress through what's a hard schedule coming up. But extra inning struggles continue for the Boston Red Sox. What was it exactly that went wrong this time? I'm going to be talking about that next. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe. If the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait? Nope, you called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important, and that's why you need OpenPhone. I've been in jobs in which the phone was basically everything. I was working in recruiting actually for a short period of time in between sports jobs, and I was constantly having to call people, and so they would constantly be calling me back, whether it was candidates, businesses that wanted to work with us. And if I missed those calls, I could miss out on money for myself. So I really could have used OpenPhone, and I've since tried it. And if I were still in that job, I know for a fact that it would save me because it won't let any call go missed. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. OpenPhone is offering Locked On Red Sox listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. That's OpenPhone.com/LockedOnMLB. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. It truly is a lifesaver, and I 100% highly recommend you using it if you're in any sort of business that relies heavily on phone calls. I promise you, it'll make your job so much easier. Well, here we are sitting here on a Tuesday thinking about the Red Sox and another frustrating loss from last night. And it felt like they were turning the tide because they were starting to win one-run games, whereas earlier in the season, those were always games the Red Sox lost. And I said, well, they figured out how to win one-run games. But apparently, when they're on the road in extra innings, that no longer applies, and everything goes out the window that they have learned in order to be more effective in winning those types of games. Because the Red Sox have now fallen to 0-7 in extra innings on the road this year. 0-7, have not won one extra inning game on the road. And it really irks me because there are scenarios in which they could win some of those games. And the most frustrating thing about it is that for whatever reason, the Red Sox seem allergic to bunting people over. They are. They're allergic to playing small ball. I don't know why, but Rob Refsnyder, who had come in to pinch hit in this game for Abraham Toro because there was a lefty on the mound and he rakes against lefties, he ended up striking out in his at-bat in the previous inning, but he was the runner on second base to start the 10th inning for the Red Sox with Jarren Duran up. The Red Sox had the top of the order up and could not score. And I didn't feel confident that they would score, which is sad because the top of the order is supposed to be the part of the lineup that makes you feel confident, like, okay, these are the guys I trust. Why was Jarren Duran not looking to bunt up there? Why? We've seen so many other teams bunt, and it works, and they win games because of it. And even in the bottom of the 10th inning, when the Phillies were at the plate, they were signaling bunt. And it makes sense, especially if the road team doesn't score in the top of the inning and you have the ghost runner on second. Why wouldn't you bunt? Alex Cora's mindset during extra innings always seems to be, we need to go for 2 runs because then we can get the win in this game. But you know what? You need to even get it to the bottom of the inning in order to give yourself a chance to win it. So focus on getting 1 run first, and anything else at that point is obviously the icing on the cake. But if you get 1 run, then going into the bottom of the inning, you're really looking at a better sense of being able to win the game, as opposed to if you go into the bottom of the inning still tied, because then you score a run in the top of the inning. Say, for example, you score 1 run. Then you go into the bottom of the inning If they scored 2 runs, okay, not much you could have done. Pitching could have been better, whatever it may be. But you scored in the top of the inning, so you did your job in that regard. But now there's going to continue to be a conversation of why don't the Red Sox believe in bunting guys over in extra innings? Your guess is as good as mine. This was a golden opportunity for the Red Sox to do that because you have speed on the base paths. Rob Refsnyder is pretty fast, but you have your fastest guy in the lineup at the plate in Jarren Duran. And you mean to tell me you don't want him to try to bunt? Why not? He's somebody who could maybe even beat out the bunt, and it might not even be a sacrifice because of how fast he is. Jarren Duran has beaten that type of stuff out before, or really lightly hit balls to the infield that end up being an infield hit for him because he's so fast. Why not try that out? Why not at least know you're advancing the runner? Because again, even if Duran didn't beat it out, then okay, he did his job, got the go-ahead run on third base, and then Alex Bregman comes up, who I would want to see up there in that scenario to drive that runner in, because all he has to do is make hard contact in the air and the Red Sox take the lead. And I'm sure his approach at the plate would have been a lot different had he been in that scenario. So it just, to me, made too much sense for the Red Sox to have Duran lay down a bunt in that scenario, because again, it could have been a bonus where you could have had first and third with nobody out if he beat out that call. But the Red Sox do this every time. They don't bunt people over. Alex Cora has this fetish with being like, okay, we're going to try to score 2 runs because then we want to win the game. But okay, 1 run at a time. If you score 2 runs in the inning, great, but that should not be the initial approach. The initial approach should just be, we need to play small ball and generate runs, put a run across the board so that we could put ourselves in a good place. And then whoever comes in to pitch in the bottom of the inning, hopefully he's able to get it done. So that really irked me that the Red Sox still have an issue with bunting people over in extra innings, and it's caused them to lose so many extra inning games. Another issue that came in extra innings in this game was Jordan Hicks just not having it. He came in the 10th and ended up ultimately being the person who was on the mound when the winning run came across the plate. Obviously, he's not Carlos Narvaez, so the catcher's interference was not on him. But what was on him? 2 walks in the inning. The run was not charged to him because, again, it was a weird situation. But he threw 10 pitches total, and only 3 of them went for strikeouts. His ERA is now a 6.24 on the season. 10 pitches, only 3 strikes. That is just completely unacceptable. And that has been an issue for Jordan Hicks throughout his career. And that was, I'm sure, one of the reasons why the San Francisco Giants were willing to part ways with him in the Rafael Devers trade. Jordan Hicks definitely has a good arsenal, and he has had moments where he's been incredibly dominant. But the problem with him is when he doesn't have a good sense of the strike zone, he can't pitch effectively. And ultimately, 2 walks is not ideal. They ended up having to put somebody on first base with nobody out because he threw a ball in the first pitch of that at-bat. And Alex Cora wasn't about to take any chances there, so they put him on after that, and it ended up being bases loaded, nobody out. And then one thing led to another, and the Phillies led to a win on a walk-off catcher's interference call. I mean, really, you can't make this stuff up, but Jordan Hicks not having it was certainly part of the problem, and that really reinforces that the Red Sox could use another reliever at the trade deadline. Now, I mentioned on yesterday's show, I don't necessarily think that's going to be the biggest priority for them, but it could be an area they look to address because obviously Chapman's been dominant. Garrett Whitlock's been pretty reliable. Greg Weisser has been hit or miss, at least as of late. And then here's Jordan Hicks now, who doesn't always have his command. Somebody who has earned some more high leverage situations, I would say, is Jorge Alcala. I think that would be an interesting guy to throw out there in a high leverage situation on the mound because he has been pretty reliable in his time with the Red Sox so far. So he's definitely somebody I'm advising that the Red Sox try to throw in those situations. But because of the unknowns of the high leverage pitchers right now, the Red Sox do need to go out and explore the relief market and at least see who's out there and see potentially what they would have to give up to get a middle to high relief guy who could maybe pitch both in high leverage and low leverage and could be trusted in either one. And that's the biggest thing that I'm looking at here is, are the Red Sox going to make that type of move? Are they going to go and look on the relief market and try to find somebody who can be reliable in this bullpen? Because it's tough to rely on Jordan Hicks every time. Now, granted, obviously, he's been pretty good since the Devers trade. I'm not saying that he's been awful and he was hurt when he first got to the Red Sox, but now he's back and he's pitching again. And overall, he's had some good outings for this Red Sox team, but in outings like this, when he just doesn't have his command, things will unravel and spiral for him. So I'd like to see the Red Sox get a little security blanket there when it comes to the relief situation. But another frustrating loss for the Red Sox. This time, really can't help but laugh about the way that it ended. Every time I re-watch the video of that ending, I just get more and more frustrated. But I laugh more and more the more frustrated I get because of realizing more and more how ridiculous it actually is. So still can salvage 2 wins in this series. The Red Sox still can win this series. A promising sign was that they were in a close competitive game against one of the best teams in baseball. That is a for sure World Series contender. That at least is promising. Obviously, we're on the wrong end of it, but at least they didn't get blown out and show that they can compete with a team like that. So go out there and win the next 2 games and finish off this series strong, please. Hopefully that happens. And I truly do appreciate you tuning in to Locked On Red Sox and making it your first listen of every day. Next, make sure to check out Locked On MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. So you can find that show on any podcast platform after this, as our experts here at Locked On will go over every game that took place that day. So you don't have to continue to worry about checking your apps on your phone for scores all the time. So make sure you check that out next. And like always, keep the faith. Go Red Sox, and I'll catch you on the flip side.